Oh, good evening. How are you? It's going to be another 2 minutes. One to it. Are you okay, Harvey?
Yeah, fine, thank you. Baruch Hashem, how are you?
Baruch Hashem. Yehuda, you okay?
Last time I had a complaint, so. Yeah, you use a low voice. Who? It's not to drink.
Okay. Tonight there's a Chabur at 9 o'clock.
Okay. Good. Chabur 9 o'clock, yeah?
Right. We're starting Be'ezus Hashem Yisborach, a new perek, the 17th perek already. Baruch Hashem. First, I'd like to start with a big, what's the correct word is, Mazel Tov for those who managed to do the Eamon Bonim bike ride. You should be zeicher to continue to do many more endeavors for the sake of Torah and mitzvahs. We're now up to Kol HaKelim. This whole perek basically deals with the topic of muktzah. And there's quite a lot of Gemara about muktzah. I just say a very little bit about muktzah. Nowadays, we're very used to the set categories of muktzah. You ask a child already, what's muktzah? So there's Kedish V'nach Tedeisa, there's muktzah machmas chassan kis, there's muktzah machmas gufoy. Times of Chazal, it wasn't so established. Not only that, but actually the Gzeres themselves changed with different periods of time. So there were different kinds, but it's still, even within the times of Chazal, you can still, by knowing the categories well today, it can help you understand the times of Chazal. So there was basically, when we talk about muktzah, we talk about something which is called kelish malachte leheter, something which you use for a heter, like a spoon, a cup, a bowl, a knife. Then you've got kelish malachte leesa, which is like a hammer, which is normally used to bang nails into a wall, but you can also use it for good things like to crack open a nut. That's kelish malachte leesa. Then you have muktzah machmas gufoy, something which is totally useless, like an eggshell or a nut peel, like pistachio nut peel. That's worse, muktzah. And you've got muktzah machmas chassan kis, a muktzah where it's so precious, you don't use it for anything except for very, very limited usage, something which is very precious. And when you talk about carrying, there's different kinds of carrying as well. There's letzerich gufoy, that's if you want the actual item, carrying a hammer to open a nut. Or there's letzerich lekoimo, let's say you want to sit down and the hammer or the telephone is on your chair. That is tiltul letzerich lekoimo. And then it's called mechamo letzer. What's mechamo letzer? Well, you don't need the place, you don't need the item. You're just worried that the thing will get destroyed. Let's say you've got your phone and it's left outside, it's going to rain, or the sun will shine on it and crack the screen. So therefore you want to take it inside, that's mechamo letzer. There's different kinds of carrying, different kinds of muktzah. Now, there's a lot of shilas in muktzah, there's a lot of interesting halachas in muktzah. Just say one which just comes up a lot in the nowadays postscripts. Let's say you've got a couch, and you've got a phone on it, your smartphone, and you've got guests. There's nothing wrong with them sitting around, but it's not geschmack to see the phone on the couch when you have Shabbos guests on Shabbos afternoon. Moving it off the couch, like to tidy it up to make the room look more mechubad for your guests. Which category would you say that is?
Okay.
Oh, so if you're makel, you say that's the tzerich mekaymer because you need its place. There are many poskim that are machmir about that. It comes up quite a lot. When you've got, let's say, many times you come into Shabbos, right? Sometimes somebody's left the purse out or the phone or the camera out, and you want to put it away, not because you need the place, because you don't want the muktzah out. So you're saying tzerich mekaymer because you want the space, but you don't really need the space. Okay, we'll come to it, but that's an interesting kind of tilt on muktzah. Why are you carrying the muktzah in such a case? Let's start the Mishnah. Kol HaKelim nitolin b'Shabbos l'sesei nimel, af al pi shnisparku. Anything which you're allowed to carry on Shabbos, Tosfos and Rashi, or Tosfos more than Rashi, you should say the first Tosfos, is very bothered because the simple words of the Mishnah would be, Kol HaKelim nitolin, you're allowed to carry any keli. And that's evidently not true. There are many things you're not allowed to carry. Rather, the way you're supposed to read it is like this. anything which you are called kelim anitonin, anything which you are allowed to carry, then even if a part of it breaks, you're also allowed to carry. Let's go a little bit outside. There are two. When we've got a keli, let's say you've got a pot with a lid which is attached to it, and the lid falls off on Shabbos, or you've got a house with a door, and the door falls off on Shabbos. Superficially, they both look like the same kind of shaila. You had a pot with a lid, or cupboard with a door to it, or let's say bedside cupboard with a door to it. That's the same as a house where the front door falls off. It's not the same. The reason is not so clear. The reason is like this, not so simple to understand. It's like this. A house is not a kelim. A house is a binyan. There's only a heter to carry kelim. There's no heter to carry houses. So therefore, when a part breaks off a keli, let's say as we've got glasses, and the part breaks off the glass, right? Sometimes we're choshesh, you might come to fix it in the middle of new gezer, but generally when you don't have the gezer, you might come to fix it. So it's like this, glasses are not muktzah. The parts that fall off are part of the keli, so they're also not muktzah. But if a front door falls off, or one of these doors would fall off inside the house, since the house is not a keli, so the door as it is can't be used, so therefore the door becomes muktzah. So the chiddush of our Mishnah is to differentiate between a part of a keli that fell off and the part of our house that fell off. So let's read it again. Anything which you're allowed to carry on Shabbos, it does to say in the Iman, you're even allowed to carry the broken doors that fell off. You're not supposed to do the brackets. They're not like the doors of a house. The doors of a house are not meant to be carried. That means the fact that you're allowed to open your front door and close the front door is because it's part of the house and bottled to the house. Once it falls off, so then you're not allowed to carry it. So over here we say it's a part of a muktzah that falls off is permitted, part of a house that falls off is forbidden. So if let's say, for example, you've got, let's say, part of the actual house breaks off, you've got, let's say, a window and the handle of the window breaks off, or anything like that, it's all muktzah, because a house is not a keli. And therefore you can't move it. And anything which breaks off your house is also muktzah. If one of the gutters falls off or something like that, it's all muktzah. That's the first half of the halacha of the Mishnah. The new part of the Mishnah is like this. Noitel Adam Kurnos, a person allowed to take a hammer, lefatzabos, a goes in to open up the nuts. That means the Mishnah is going to give us a list of taking items for unusual activities. Here you're taking a hammer, which is usually made to build a house, and you're using it to crack open your nuts. And that's mutter. Alternatively, kaldum, it's a hatchet, a kind of axe. You've got a fig cake, and that just suddenly comes to the house, and the fig cake is really, really hard and dry. And now you want to cut it through, and the normal knife doesn't do the job. To go outside to your garden, take your spade, which you use to dig your potatoes, and you can use it to cut open your fig cake. Magera, a saw which you normally use to do your DIY work. To start cutting yourself a slice of cheese. All this is mutter. We can all discuss why it's mutter. You've got dried figs at the bottom of a basket, a barrel. You want to take something to shovel them up. Reches is these big forks which they used to do to throw the grain in the air, and then what would happen is the grain would fall down and the shaft would blow away. So it was a winnowing fork. Or a malgaze. Malgaze is a fork which people use to dig, like a rake. Loss is a lot of the cotton. Let's say you've got a child, you want to feed the child. So the Tefillah Yisrael asks the question, when are you ever going to feed your child with a pitchfork? So he says, let's say your child is across a stream and is very far away. So you want to feed it, and this is the way to feed it. Okay. Then it's mutter. It's a kush, it's a nidov, it's a karka, a long reed, litchoif boy. Let's say, for example, you want to make a nice kiddush. So you take a big it's a wooden stick which you use to weave your baskets with, and you put strawberries on. So you're using the stick as a way like we use as a toothpick, but you're using one of these big wooden pieces. Machat sheliad, you can use a needle, little bit of codes to pull out what's a code? A splinter. There's just a big kind of needle which they use to make sacks. If you need to pick a lock, so you can't use a small needle, you have to get a big needle. So if you want to pick a lock, you're allowed to use one of these very big needles, which they use to sew sackcloth. You need a bigger needle. So again, two parts of the Mishnah. The first part of the Mishnah is a heter about kelim, a broken kelim, you're allowed to use the pieces. A broken house, you cannot use the pieces. The second half of the Mishnah just tells us that you're allowed to use items even if they're not the normal way you use an item. So now the Gemara asks a kasha just in diktuk a little bit. The Mishnah seemed to be saying, even though they broke, even though they broke, but when did they break? The partial translation, this says something like this. Even if they broke on Shabbos, never mind if they broke on weekday. On Shabbos, they were prepared by Erev Shabbos, by the Aviyah, and over here literally means the father, but what it means over here is the main part. So you've got a big pot, and the handle of the pot fell off. When Shabbos came in, Muktzah is always established when Shabbos came in. When Shabbos came in, and that part was still part of the pot. So was it fine? Of course it was fine, it was part of the pot. So if it breaks off on Shabbos, it's more likely to be mutter. Because when Shabbos came in, and that's when Muktzah is established, it was a normal piece of the pot, you could use it. Mashenkin, if it broke off before Shabbos, so then it's much worse. Because when Shabbos came in, that handle of the pot, or the lid of the pot that fell off, wasn't no longer usable. It's not a normal lid which comes off. Let's say a lid which is part of the thing, right? And it broke off. So then it wasn't prepared. You couldn't use it. So the lashon of the Mishnah which says Afapishin is spoken, even if it broke, the Gemara and the haven't been understood. Afapishin is spoken, even if it broke on Shabbos. And Moses says that doesn't make any sense. Even if it broke on Shabbos, even if it broke on Shabbos, if it broke on Shabbos, it should be more kuladik. It should say even if it broke on a weekday. Why does the Mishnah say even if it broke on Shabbos? So Moses says, this is how you have to read the Mishnah. You're allowed to take everything on Shabbos without to say anymore with the doors. You're supposed to put a pause if you read it. Even if they broke on a weekday, then b'Shabbos you're allowed to carry it. So let's say on a Friday afternoon you come home and you've got a jug and then the handle of the jug broke off, or you've got something which has got a whole lid, a bin with a lid to it, and the lid breaks off. It doesn't matter. Oh, when Shabbos came in, I couldn't use it. The answer is, it is part of the keli. And just like the keli is not muktzah, parts of the keli are not muktzah, and therefore it's okay. Mashenkin the door is muktzah if it falls off the house. Now the more goes into Nilchas muktzah. Tanabon. Delesh shel shidor, the door of a carriage, the shel teva of a chest, a big box, the shel migdal of a big cupboard. Noitlin avlei machzirin, you're allowed to take it off, but you're not allowed to put it back. The shelul shel tanagonim, a chicken coop, lo noitlin avlei machzirin. You're not allowed to take it on, not allowed to take it off. So it goes like this. A chicken coop is attached to the ground. It's like a proper house. And therefore, if you take it off or you take it on, you're doing an Issa Deraisa or building. If you take it off, you're doing soisa. If you're putting it back on, you're doing bonus. So of course, that's forbidden. And it's not connected to the ground. Maybe in the old days they were. Even nowadays, I wonder if it's considered part of the ground, like a shed. Is it moved around the chicken coop all the time? I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe that chicken coop was different. Okay. Well, it says Bishlim, we understand that chicken coop. We say we're not allowed to because it's binyan and stira. A cupboard. My kasava. What does this Tana hold? If it's not allowed to build, then yesh stira bekelim, not allowed to take it off. The ain't stira bekelim, if not allowed to break, ain't binyan bekelim. So it doesn't make sense. This is the vice of the chayra. How can the Brisa say you're allowed to take off, but you're not allowed to put on? If there's a problem of boina, you shouldn't be allowed to do either. If there's no problem of boina, you should be allowed to do both. Both ways is forbidden. You're not allowed to build, you're not allowed to dismantle. The Brisa doesn't say you're allowed to take it off. The Brisa says, if it fell off, you're allowed to put it back on. Why allowed to put it back on? Because there's no binyan back in. This is going to be a sinister kashayla. We've talked about it a few times, if you remember, and that is like this: that if you put even one brick on a wall on Shabbos, you've been over the Issa Deraisa of Binyan. By Kalim, there's a question like this: everybody agrees there's an Issa of Makar B'Patish. What's the Issa of Makar B'Patish? That's to perfect something. So let's say, for example, you've got a table and you screw on the last part of the table, and now the table is a proper usable table. So you've done Makar B'Patish. The question is there an issa of building and dismantling by kelim? It's a machlokas. We paskin there isn't. Why should there not be binyan by kelim? Because no binyan, when they did it to the Mishkan, was by building the Mishkan. They didn't build items. They created items, didn't build items. So we paskin is not. So the most is like this. Abaya holds that there's no binyan mistir by kelim. And what the Brisa says, so the Brisa holds yesh binyan. Abaya holds the Brisa holds yesh binyan by kelim. When the Brisa says you're allowed to take off, it doesn't mean you're allowed to take it off. The Brisa is saying that if it fell off, you mustn't replace it. I have two questions on your explanation of this Brisa. First of all, the Brisa actually explicitly says that you're allowed to take it off. Not like you're saying that you're not allowed to take it off. Why does the Brisa finish off, but you're not allowed to? The word but is always, if I permit something, but that's forbidden. I can't say if something fell off, but you're not allowed to put it back on. That doesn't make any sense. I haven't yet permitted anything to say that, but this is forbidden. So first I have to say something's permitted, and then I say, but this is forbidden. But if you haven't permitted anything, it doesn't make sense to say this, but this is forbidden. So Rava says to Abai, your explanation that we're talking about a cupboard door that fell off, and you're not allowed to put it back, doesn't make sense for two reasons. First of all, it says you're allowed to take it off. And I said, according to you, why did the Brisa finish off, but you're not allowed to put it back? We've never yet permitted anything. Really, there's no problem of building or dismantling. But we're worried that you might come to do a very good job. And when you replace the item, you might put it in a way which is very, very tightly joined. And then you'll be over because of this on Makabah Patish. And why we're not choshesh that when you take it off? Because there's no issa of the opposite of Makabah Patish. Makabah Patish is only forbidden in the building, not in the dismantling. By binyan bekelim, if the binyan, there's a problem of putting on a brick and taking off a brick. Both would be also deraisa on Shabbos. By Makabah Patish, there's an issa to complete something. There's no issa to dismantle an item on Shabbos. If you break a table on Shabbos, you've not been over the issa of the opposite of Makabah Patish. There is no such issa. There's no issa sosa. In fact, you're allowed to break a table minat Torah on Shabbos. If you want to, for whatever reason, smash a stender or a table or a cup, you're allowed to on Shabbos minat Torah. Because there's no the opposite of Makabah Patish. So therefore, since over here, there's no proper Makabah Patish, it's only a gzer, they only forbade to put it on. When you put it on, you might then screw it in tight, and therefore it's forbidden. And in fact, the person can say that if you've got glasses on Shabbos, and one of the pieces falls off, you're not allowed to even attach it in a loose way. Why? Because we're choshesh that if you do, you'll come to then attach it tight. And if you do it tight, what will you be over? Makabah Patish. So therefore, that's no good. Says the Gemara. No till Adam Kronos. You're allowed to take a hammer to open your nuts. We're talking about the hammer which is made, a nut cracker which is made to open up nuts. A hammer which the blacksmith uses, you can't use a normal hammer, a blacksmith hammer, to start opening your nuts. That's forbidden. Because something which a kelim shemachtel like a hammer. Blacksmith's hammer is a kelim shemachtel. Even a tzerich gufoy, what's tzerich gufoy mean? When you need the item, over here you need the item to open up your nuts. Nevertheless, it is awesome. The end of our mission, the is a marvelous gaze. When the end of the mission talks about giving a pitchfork to feed a child, does ever a person use such a thing for a child? In the first case of a hammer, you could explain, but we're talking about a specific kind of hammer which is made to open nuts. But at the end of the mission, we're clearly not talking about items which are made for feeding children. And you're allowed to use a hammer of a blacksmith to open up your nuts. Kasava, top of Chav Gimel Amud Aleph, you're even allowed to use it letzerich gufoy. So you're allowed to use anything. You're allowed to use a hammer on Shabbos for the sake of opening nuts. And that's how we pass it, that you're allowed to use a kilit shemlachte le'isel letzerich gufoy. Eisvei Abai leRabbi. So Abai asked Rabbi the following question. Meducha. And meducha and the ali are two parts of how you grind psalmim. Meducha is the mortar, and the ali is the pestle. In simple English, the mortar is the bit that you use to bang, and the pestle is like a kind of bowl and a plate which you put the things on and you bang them down to make them to crush spices. So it says like this: if it's got a bit of garlic inside it, not allowed to. So we see they're not allowed to, even if you want to sit on it. That means if you want to sit on the pestle or mortar, you're not allowed to. Oh, it's a kiddush shemalachte le'isel letzerich gufoy, and you hold that it's mutter. We're going to have in the Mishnah a day or two that Nehemiah holds that you're not allowed to use anything on Shabbos except for its normal usage. That means anything, even if something is not proper mukti, you're not allowed. Everything has to be used for the normal intended purpose. Well, I don't think so. Not according to Nehemiah. It's not unless Okay, we'll see. Nehemiah holds more chomo. He holds that it has to. Let's say you decide to use your hammer to crack open nuts. That's its normal use. Could be. I don't know. I just wanted to say. I should say that at the beginning. Talk about muktzah. The Gemara tells us the reason why they forbade muktzah is because they didn't want people to carry on Shabbos. Very interesting. Now, really, it's very hard to understand because if they don't want people to carry on Shabbos, what difference does it make if it's a kiddush v'lachtel or kiddush v'lachtel? It's very hard to understand. But that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says in Shabbos and in Beitzah. Yet the Rambam and other Rishonim came up with other reasons as to why muktzah is forbidden. I'll just say very briefly, even though it's not so much in the Gemara, but it's very interesting. The Rambam says one reason is because if you take a muktzah, you may come to do a malacha. For example, if you carry a pen, you might come to write. You take a hammer, you might come to build. So therefore, Chazal did not want you to take muktzah in case you might come to work with it. You might come to do a malacha. Another reason he said is because then people might use Shabbos as a day of moving items. They'll say to something like this: during the week, I have to work, and I've got no time for anything. Shabbos are not allowed to work anyway. So they'll set aside the Shabbos instead of spending time traveling and learning and having meals. They'll wait for Shabbos to sort out the houses to move. If they need to move during the week, they'll wait for Shabbos to move. So therefore, that's why they forbade muktzah in order that Shabbos be a restful day. A third reason the Rambam says is there are people that never work, and the whole day they spend their days either learning or philosophizing, whatever it may be. And for them, Shabbos will not be unique. So therefore, they had to make something that Shabbos should be special. And therefore, by making muktzah, everybody is involved in muktzah. So there are actually 4 different reasons. If you look at Mishra brings 4 reasons. Even though it's interesting, it's more brings 1, the Rambam and the Rishonim brings 3. Mishra brings them all as 4. The 4 reason is because you're not allowed to carry. If you touch muktzah, you may come to carry. Another reason is because we don't want you to do the malacha. That makes a lot of sense. Another reason is because we don't want Shabbos to be a day that people should use it to do all their jobs. And another reason is for those that would not have a difference to their Shabbos because their weekday is not a day of work. So therefore, that makes something special on Shabbos. I once saw in these later Achodim Nachlas Yisrael. What do you say? Interesting. Yeah, Kiddush Challah would not be enough. But Nachlas Yisrael tries to work through how there's many different Isurim in Muktzah, right? There's of course Bachlos Cheson Kiz, and he tries to work that each reason makes the most sense for a different kind of Issa Muktzah, as we will see the different Zeres Muktzah. That not 4 repetitive reasons, but each one works for different things. For example, even Kiddush V'Lachtel from those, all see. Okay, those are the 4th. So Maisa. Rava Pascha, you're allowed to carry Kiddush V'Lachtel Issa L'Tzerech Gufo for its own sake. So Abai asked him from this pestle and mortar, which you're allowed to, not even allowed to sit on. So he said that's in the Nechemia. Eisvei, so he asked him from another place. Here, I think it's correct to read the brackets. Ali, not allowed to take like a kind of table, a kind of pestle, which was like a bowl, which they used to use to grind the perfume on, the katzaval of a basar to chop meat. Or we still matir and piece, they still say it's okay. But they both agree, but both of them agree you're not allowed to carry it. It means once you've cut up meat, you're not allowed to move it. The only reason they're allowed to cut up the meat was because of tzerich simchas yom tov. But once you've done it, you're not allowed to. Oh, why can't you move it for your own purposes? He wanted to answer like the Nechemia. Everybody agrees. These are 3 kinds of items which are very, very precious, which in nowadays language we would say they are muktzah machmas cheson kis, meaning they are items which one would not use for other purposes. You only use them for the specified purpose. So sirchi is like a kind of spindle. Zairi is a press, the thing you press down with the olives. Mezori is kind of mallet. What is it? A kind of a hammer, which a person uses to bang. Okay. So what happens is these things, they given the kavod alayu. Since people are makpid on them, Rashi's got another pshat is that these are all painter's items. Rashi himself says 2 pshat what these things are. These are special items either for weaving, or for pressing, or for painting. The kivud the kavod alayu, since person makpid miyachidu mokim. That means these are things which are much worse. These are things which a person makes muktzah because he's scared that he will get ruined, and therefore it's muktzah machmas cheson kis. So far we've had The halachas of muktzah, we've had a difference between a house losing a door, which is muktzah, a keli losing an item, breaking off an item, which is mutter, and then we had the shittas vava, which we pass like the keli shalach to the issa as a mutter letzerich kufa. When the Mishnah says you'll take a hammer, it's talking about a goldsmith hammer. That you're allowed to use a goldsmith's hammer to bang your nuts. It's a hammer which they use to grind the spices. Meaning that if you say you're allowed to use a goldsmith, then it's no raya that you're allowed to use the one of Besamim. If you say you're allowed to use one of Besamim, Kavachim you're allowed to use of Zavim. In those days, the hammers used to grind Besamim were more precious and more delicate than the hammers which were used to bang on the goldsmith's hammer. So therefore, if a person could use a goldsmith's hammer to open the nuts, that's not a raya that you can use the hammer which you grind your besamim with to open nuts. Because the ones which use it for besamim are even more makbit. So if you allow the hammer which you do the besamim, kavachim, whether you're allowed to do the hammer which you're allowed to do the goldsmith's hammer. If you do the goldsmith, it's not a raya that you're allowed to use the besamim. It means basically what happens is like this. We're very used to categorizing things quite easily. But in my sense, it's not the Chazal. They always had different questions. Is this a muktzah machmas chassan kiss or is it not? It's interesting that Moshe Feinstein has got a very big chumrah. I've seen it that very place to bring it. That paper is muktzah machmas chassan kiss, and therefore, if you have in your gemara, I sometimes do it, put a plain piece of paper because in case you want to write something, you want to have a piece of paper on you, and you put in your gemara has actually got muktzah inside it on Shabbos. Why? Because a person doesn't use writing paper for any other purpose except for writing. And therefore, in that way, muktzah machmas chassan kiss is something which you specify for thing. I don't know if nowadays, when people, my child was kvetching, I would happily give them a piece of paper to distract them. So therefore, I don't know if it is a thing. But it's interesting. It's just to show how much muktzah machmas chassan kiss come up with. Okay. Pago. Pago is a fig which is not properly ripe. Shetomno beteven, and what you did is you put it inside a pile of straw. Becharo, a cake. Shetomno begecholim, you put it inside coals. If a bit of it is open, that means you can reach it. Mutalatal, you can pull it out. And even though other things will then move because of it, it doesn't matter because it's still it doesn't matter because what happens is it is. Because when you pull it out, you're not moving anything else. You're just touching that. You're just pulling out the fig, and everything else can stay in place. You're not moving everything else. The fig is still revealed, or the cake is still revealed. So you're pulling it out without moving everything else. Vim lav. But if it's not megula, that means if it's completely covered, also the tal, you're not allowed to carry it because by moving that, you'll move the rest. You can put inside it like a toothpick or a big stick, then now it's melen, and everything will move by itself. Says the Gemara, that the loch is like him. Again, you've got a fig which is hidden in straw. The straw is muktzah. So what should you do? Stick a stick inside the straw, and then like a toothpick, a long toothpick. Get at the fig, and then pull the fig out. And what will happen is, all the straw will move. Says of Nachman, that's okay. That's halacha like Ibn Tadoi, that's per mutter. Says remember the son of Nachman tiltum natzal ishmei tiltum. V'omar of Nachman hay puglo, the radish. A radish is the shape of a triangle, right? It goes narrow at the bottom, at the top it's wide. So if you stick it in the ground, the pointy face down, and you pull it out, or you stick it into muktzah and you pull it out, will the muktzah move? No, because since it is this shape, it's like a cone shape upside down. So when you pull it out, let's say it's in a pile of muktzah, it won't cause muktzah to move. If it's put inside the muktzah upside down, let's say put a radish upside down in muktzah, where the bottom half is the wide part and the top part is the narrow part. When you pull it out, even if you pull it out from the narrow part, invariably the muktzah will move. So Rav Nachman said, it depends how you stuck the radish into the ground as to whether you're allowed to move muktzah, whether you're allowed to move the radish out. He said like this, if it's the normal way up, that means the top to bottom shoy, if it's upside down, awesome. Why is it forbidden? Because by moving it, you're going to be moving muktzah. And so no, Nachman was chayzer, and he holds that tilta min hatzad lo yishmei tilta, and that's how we pass. So therefore, if you move, let's say, for example, you want to reach something on Shabbos, which is not muktzah, and in the process, you're going to end up moving muktzah. For example, let's say you've got a cupboard, and it's got lots of little things inside it. Let's say some muktzah toys, and you want to take out a chess set, which is not muktzah. But the only way to get it is by moving the chess set. Other things are muktzah will move you okay, because that's called tilta min hatzad. You have to be careful that it's not a bosses, that you haven't placed something in the whole Shabbos to be a bosses on top. But generally, in such a case, will not be a bosses. But generally, you're allowed to move something. Let's say you want to get something out of the cupboard, and then your key, your car keys, and your phone is all there. But all you're doing is you want to pull out the thing which is mutter to pull out. That's okay, because it's still tilta min hatzad. Yes, that's exactly. Well, exactly the same Gemara about Hatmona, that you take the pot out and it doesn't matter. Yeah, that's exactly the same Gemara. Yes. A needle you're allowed to take it to pull out a splinter. Sholach le Rabba Beda Rabba lo Rabbi Yosef. Rabba the son of Rabba sent Rabbi Yosef following question. Amdinu Rabbeinu. Machat a needle shnitul charo uktzah ma'u. A needle which is missing either the eye or the end. There's two parts to a needle, right? A needle has an eye at the very top, a place to put the thread through, and the bottom it gets to a very, very sharp end. So imagine a needle where one of those pieces broke off. What's the difference? Is it muktzah? He said to me, it's tenisua. We learned from our Mishnah. Machat you're allowed to take a needle which is normally used for sewing, which is the case of you're allowed to move it for what? You're allowed to move it on Shabbos just to take out a splinter. Now, you don't need an eye of a needle to pull out a splinter. Therefore, you see clearly that even a needle which is missing the eye is still not muktzah. Because since our Mishnah establishes that there's a purpose to a needle just for the sake of pulling out a splinter. In fact, you're allowed to move a needle on Shabbos just for that sake. So if a needle is missing the eye, it's not muktzah, because it's still value. Anything which you can't use on Shabbos, broken eggshells and things like that, or not pistachio peels, are all muktzah. You can't use them. This is not muktzah. You can still use it to pull out a splinter. Esvei. We ask the kasha as follows. Besides for muktzah, there's another nafkamina. The halacha is that something which is not usable is not tomei. It's not considered a keli. In order for something to be considered a keli to become tomei, it has to be a proper keli. It has to be usable. If something can't be used, it's not a keli. And the Mishnah says, "Machat little charoi uktzah tahira." A needle which is missing either the eye or the end of it, or the sharp bit, is toy. Why is it toy? Because it's not a keli. So you see over here that's not a keli. If it's not a keli, so therefore it should be muktzah. We've got two questions regarding a needle. Is it muktzah? Meaning, is it useless and therefore it's muktzah? Alternatively, is it tamei or toy? That means, is it usable and therefore it's tamei, or not usable and it's toy? So he asked him regarding muktzah. He said it's not muktzah. So he said, how can you say such thing regarding tumah v'tahara? We see that it is toy. So he said to that case, Amar Abaya, tumah Shabbos karamis. You're comparing tumah to Shabbos. Tumah kli ma'isa b'inon. You need to be able to use it. It has to be a proper kli ma'isa. It has to be a keli which you can use it for the original purpose, for the purpose of why you made the keli. In Shabbos, we did the chazi b'inon. For Shabbos, for something not to be muktzah, as long as it's usable. You can still use it to fill out the form, splinter. So, regarding Hilchas Tumah V'Tahara, it depends as to whether it is a Kli Maisa, whether it is the original keli that was originally made. A needle missing the eye no longer is a needle. By Sheinkin, regarding Shabbos, the question is only, is it usable? If it's usable, it's not muktzah. Is it useful? Yes, it's useful. Even without the eye, you can still pull out a thought. The one who asked the question was correct for challenging Rabbi Yosef. Why? That if regarding Tumah it's nothing, regarding Shabbos it's nothing. So we've got Machlokes Abai v'Rav over here regarding, do we compare Hilchas Tumah v'Tahara to Hilchas Muktzah? According to Abai, we don't compare, and we say as follows. Regarding Tumah, it has to be the original keli, otherwise it's not Tomei. Regarding Muktzah, as long as it's usable, so Rav says no. If it's not Tomei, then it's Muktzah. Because at the end of the day, if it's not Tomei, it's useless. If it's useless, it's a Muktzah. Therefore, Rav says that Talu Zebozeh. Meisve. What's the kasha on Rava? Machat. And needle, ben the kuba and shin the kuba. Whether it's got an eye or whether it's got no eye, meaning whether it's got a hole or not. Mutter the taltel of a Shabbos. We've got before Shabbos that tells us, the Shabbos explicitly tells us, that the din that a needle has to have an eye in order for it to be a keli is only regarding Shabbos, not like Gabi Torah. Tirgama ba libet rova begul mioskinon zimne demlun lechalayu mashvelu mona. This is an interesting chiluk. There's a difference between when the needle is first made and when the needle is after it's already been made. That means when a needle is first made, so then what happens is like this. Until it's got the eye, it's not considered a needle because your intention is to make it into a needle. And so, therefore, I said this. I said it incorrectly. When a needle gets broken, a person throws it in the bin. Why? Because he originally had a needle which had an eye inside it. He used it for sewing. So now that the eye is broken off, a person will not keep it. Because he'll say to himself, this is a broken needle. I had a good needle, it's broken, chuck it. So therefore, it's not Tomei, and it is Muktzah. That's Rava's shit. We're only going with Shittas Rava. Now, Abai doesn't agree with it. But Rava says, since once the eye fell off, you would throw it in the bin, so therefore it is Muktzah, because it's useless, and it's not Tomei. But when you originally make needles, sometimes you make a needle with an eye, and sometimes you make a needle without an eye. So therefore, those that you make without an eye, that's your decision making, and therefore it is still considered to be a keli even without an eye. And therefore regarding Shabbos, it will be considered useful, and regarding Tumah, it will be a proper keli. So therefore, when did Rava say that when do we say over here? Right. It's like this. It's therefore again. I'm not going to get so clear. I should say it better. When it's finished, we've got this Yomi means the raw state, and when it's finished, it's the bit that's broken off. So when it's in the raw state, so then according to Rava, we're mechalik between Tumah and Shabbos. When it's finished and you break it off, we're not mechalik between Tumah and Shabbos. I say again, let's do it inside again. Abai explains according to Rava. This brisa that makes a chilik between Tumah and Shabbos is talking about the raw state, the unfinished state. Sometimes you decide not to make a needle, and therefore it's considered you make it into a mona. Until you make it a mona, though, till you decide that, it's not tomei. But regarding Shabbos, it's useful because you can use it as it is. But if you've already finished it, and then afterwards a bit fell off and it got broken, a person throws it, and once a person throws it, therefore it is not muktzah. Sorry, it is muktzah and not tomei because it's useless. I just said it again because to get it clear. When something is finished and afterwards it breaks, according to Rava, it's tomei. It is muktzah because it's useless, and it is torah because it's not a keli. When something's being made, then there's a chilik between Tumah and Shabbos. Regarding Shabbos, since you can still use it, therefore it's not muktzah. Regarding Tumah, it depends on your decision making. If you decide that you're still going to make an eye and a needle inside it, so it's not considered a keli yet, therefore it's not tomei. If you decide to leave it as it is, then it is tomei. It says that there are a few halachas which more compares a little bit to our Mishnah. Asuba Yanuka. When a baby is born, what they would do is they would stretch all his muscles and put all the limbs in the right position. How do I know that it's forbidden? It's now we've learned in Oisim we're not allowed to make apiktivizin b'Shabbos. Apiktivizin, topic of Chav Gimel Amud Beis, was a kind of potion which would make people throw up. And if people wanted to eat a very, very lot, they would eat. When they would get full, they would eat apiktivizin, would make them throw up, and then they could eat more. You're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. Oh, it's mashma. It's not a sakana. Shmuel actually mentioned this. It's not a sakana because what happens is you can wait till after Shabbos and straighten out muscles. It's not. So the halacha is that you're not allowed to make an emetic, I think it's called, an emetic on Shabbos, because, what do you say? Emetic. Emetic on Shabbos. Why? Because it's a kind of a foot. So he says, just like a emetic, which is not a normal, you're not doing anything to the person, you're not doing an operation or anything, just makes them throw up, is forbidden. Similarly, stretching out the muscles of the baby should be forbidden. In both cases, not a normal medical procedure. In both cases, the Chazal should forbid it. Rav Sheshes, so Sheshes says, no, you can't compare. It's not a normal thing to do to throw up. It's normal, and therefore it's not considered medication, and therefore it's mutar. How do I know it's permitted? It's now you're allowed to put out a splinter on Shabbos. Now, here, when you put out a splinter, you're fixing the person. The person had a splinter. And now, by pulling it out, what you're doing is ensuring the person is healthy. So just like you're allowed to pull out a splinter, you're allowed to stretch the muscles of a baby. So the Gemara says, Rav Nachman, you can't compare. Hossam pocket, it's embedded, it's put inside him. Hochaloi pocket, meaning a splinter is not part of a human being's body. So pulling out a splinter is taking a foreign part of which is falling into a human body. Taking out a foreign part, that's not healing a person. That's just pulling away something which shouldn't be there. By stretching the muscles, you're actually fixing up the body itself. And therefore, that's forbidden. So the Gemara says we've got three different cases. Regarding making something of activism, which makes a person throw up, everybody agrees it's forbidden. Regarding a splinter, everybody agrees that it's permitted. The whole machlokes is regarding stretching of muscles. Rav Nachman holds that it's forbidden because he compares stretching a muscle to throwing up. For both of them, you're healing a person, or you're making a person in a better situation. It's not a proper medical procedure, but in both situations, you're helping a person feel better than himself. One person throws up, now he's got more space to eat, so he feels more comfortable, and the baby feels more comfortable, the muscles have been stretched. So therefore, he holds both are forbidden. But Shesha says, no, you can't compare it to stretching, which is normal. Mashenkin throwing up is not normal. I compare it to thorns, where just like a thorn is permitted because you're taking away a foreign part, also by stretching the muscles, what you're doing is you're making the person in a healthier situation. Nachman says you can't compare because a thorn is a foreign piece, but this is not. So that's the question, what do we compare? We passed the night. It's mutter. One is allowed to stretch a baby when it's born. In all the days, what they used to do is they used to leave the olives in a very, very big barrel in order they should heat up. And then that later, when you would squeeze them, it would be easier to extract the oil. And you'd have a special stick which you would use to stir the olives inside. So, if it's got a knot at the end. And knot over here doesn't mean literally like a rope knot. It means like an extra piece, which was like a bump inside it. Mekabel tumah. If not, it's not mekabel tumah. The more explains all of this. Either way, it's considered a keli. And since it's a keli, you're allowed to carry it on Shabbos. You're allowed to touch it on Shabbos. Furthermore, why is it mekabel tumah just because it's got a knot? Pshute klietzu, upshute klietz, and mekabel tumah. Anything which is flat piece of wood is not mekabel tumah. My time, the Torah, when the Torah talks about tumah, the Torah in the same pasuk mentions sack and wood. Pasuk says anything which falls on it, called klietz, or beget, or sack. A sack is something which has ability to store things, and therefore wood is only mekabel tumah if you can store. So if you've got a flat piece of wood, like say a shelf you buy from B&Q sometimes, like a flat piece of wood, it's not mekabel tumah. You can't store anything inside it. So I'm shaking a flat piece of metal, by the way, is mekabel tumah. Why is a flat piece of metal is mekabel tumah? Anybody know? No, flat piece of wood could also be used because it's not mentioned in that pasuk, and the pasuk only mentions wood, clothes, and sackcloth. It doesn't mention metal. Is mentioned in a different pasuk. So metal is not compared to sackcloth. So wood, which is compared to sackcloth, has to be able to have a storage capacity. If it doesn't have storage capacity, wood is not mekabel tumah. So why in our Mishnah, just because a piece of wood has a knot inside it, is it got storage capacity? Most cupboards are not mekabel tumah because of the fact, let's say a small cupboard. A small cupboard is mekabel tumah. Yes, even the door that falls off it. The Gemara says like this. This knot at the end, what you would do is you would catch the oil. And what you would do is you would stir the olives, and then you would take out the piece of wood. And at the end of it, you could then see it's a tiny little bit, like, if you have to test the oil in the car, at the very bottom of it, there's like a small twist in the metal in order to be able to catch the oil, and then you can see whether there's actually enough oil in the car. So they used to have this piece of wood, which would go inside the barrel of olives, and at the end of it, there was a knot, and the knot would then catch the oil. And then you could then take out, after you stirred it, you would look at it and then see if it's good quality, if it's ready to be squeezed, if it needs to be extracted better, etc. So therefore, if it had no knot, then as you would take out the wood, all the oil would drip off, you wouldn't catch any oil. So therefore, it was only a pshuta kliyetz. So therefore, the Mishnah said like this: if it's got a knot, then it catches the oil, so therefore it's mekabel tumah. If it's got no knot, it doesn't catch the oil, it's not mekabel tumah. But either way, it's considered a keli. Why is it considered a keli? For Shabbos, it's considered a keli because at the end of the day, you can stir the oil. It's like a stirring spoon. Therefore, it's permitted. Rabbi Yossi says, the next Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi you're allowed to carry everything. Chutz min hamesa agodol, except for a big saw, the yosid shel machresho, and the plow, the piece of metal of the plow. When you've got a plow, at the bottom of the plow, there's a piece of metal which actually makes a furrow in the ground. Those two things are forbidden. The Rishonim will explain that Rabbi Yossi is over here. He is the first Mishnah that's teaching us muktzah machmas chesron kis. These two items, people are extremely careful about. This is the time still now had it in the Gemara a little bit. This is the first Mishnah where we have a problem that it's muktzah machmas chesron kis, and therefore you're not allowed to carry it. Says the Gemara like this: Omar Nachman, hay uchle de katzri, the bowl of washer people, ki yoseh shemachresha domi. It's like the plow's metal that it is muktzah machmas chesron kis. Now, what did they use? What did the washerman use a bowl? So Rashi's got two mahalchim. In the olden days, after they would wash the clothes, they would put it in like a sieve, big metal sieve, which had holes in the bottom. The big bowl had holes. Then they would light a fire underneath, pour perfume on the fire, and then put the clothes on top in this big metal bowl. And then that way, the clothes would have a very, very nice smell. Alternatively, that was one pshat Rashi says. Alternatively, what they used to do is they used to take this big bowl, throw in the clothes, and pour a lot of hot water over it. The hot water would then rinse the clothes and then come out of the holes. Even nowadays, our washing machines have like the drum is perforated because that's the only way to wash it properly. So this perforated bowl, which the washer people used to use, is muktzah machmas chesron kis because people are very particular what they use it for. The word carries on. The knife of tanners, and the knife of butchers, and the wooden plane which woodmakers use, which they would scrape the wood. And here we have an interesting Tosfos, which is actually brought down in the Mishnah Vur. The Rashi says that a butcher's knife is muktzah machmas chesron kis. Now, a sheichet has different knives. With one knife, he does the shechita. After he does the shechita, he needs to chop up the meat into pieces. And then for that, he uses another knife. Which knife are we talking about over here? Now, Rashi just said the butcher's knife. Teresa understood from Rashi. Let's see this inside. Even the knife which should cut the meat. Says Teresa, it's only the knife you shech because the shechita knife is much, much more muktzah machmas chesron kis. Why? Because if it gets a tiny nick inside it, you can't use it for shechita. In fact, the Rav would often put his thumb across and his tongue across just to check that it is smooth. So therefore, only the shechita knife, says the Mishnah Vur, that the butcher's knife is not muktzah machmas chesron kis because it's not so precious to him. It's only the shechita knife. But to say that the butcher's knife is not nice, the Mishnah Vur brings that are those. He brings Rashi as well. That those are machmir that it's muktzah machmas chesron kis, also the butcher's knife. But it's a machlokes because what is muktzah machmas chesron kis? Only the shechita knife, which you're very, very careful about. They don't use it for anything except for shechita. Even by shechita, they're very, very careful. They don't cut more than absolutely necessary because they're scared they'll get a small cut in it. Or we talk about also the butcher's knife because at the end of the day, it's a precious knife. Says the Gemara, Tonu Rabban. What happened was in the days of Nehemiah, people were not being careful about Shabbos, and he was very, very upset about it. So Nehemiah came along in the times of Ezra and Nehemiah by the beginning of Binah Bayis Sheni, and he established a very, very chomodika muktzah. Nehemiah came along, and he made muktzah much, much more chomod than today. Everything was forbidden to touch. And then with time, Klal Yisrael became more careful in Hilchos Shabbos. As they became more careful in Hilchos Shabbos, they became more maker with muktzah. Because as they saw that the people were being more machmir on themselves, Chazal felt they could be more lenient. It's a bit like this virus. As we see people being more careful, the government feel they could be more maker because they see that we were being careful anyway. If they saw people were not being careful, they would have to be more machmir. They have to elef Abdolis. The Chemya saw people not machmir on Shabbos, so he made a very chomodika muktzah. Later, they saw people were makbid on Shabbos, they became more kuladik. So the Gemara says like this. Bo is showing on the right at the beginning of the times of the Shabbos. You're only allowed to touch 3 things on Shabbos. What are the 3 things? It's like a little knife which they would cut the figs. A ladle to take out the part of the top of the, you need to skim the pot. So you have to have a ladle to skim the pot. And a small knife on the table. So over here, Tesis points out the second Tesis. Of course, it couldn't be that only permitted people to touch 3 things the whole Shabbos. People would have gone mad. What about eating? What about having a drink of water? It means, except for the absolute basic necessities, which were plates, cups, and spoons, everything else was muktzah. You weren't allowed to touch, you're not allowed to move, you're not allowed to move anything, not books, nothing, everything was muktzah. That's what they did in the days of Nehemiah, except for 3 things. That was this little knife which they used to cut the figs, the little knife on the table, the little thing to cut the figs, and the ladle to take away the top, to skim the top of the pot. Now, those, because they felt that it was needed, And then what happened was, if you read carefully the Gemara, hitiru, they became more mekel, v'chozu v'etiru, and became more mekel again, v'chozu v'etiru, and they became more mekel again, that's already 3 times. Ad she'amu kol ha'kelim nitolim b'Shabbos. That's the 4th time. Ad she'amu is a 4th heter. They were matted once, they were matted twice, they were matted 3rd time. Ad she'amu, until eventually they said, that's the 4th time, we're going to come up with a bigger heter. So 4 levels they were matted. What were they matted? Kol ha'kelim nitolim b'Shabbos chutz min mesa agod v'yoseh shema choisha. 4 different times they were matted until they were matted everything except for muktzah machmas chasson kis, which is in our Mishnah the very big saw and the plows metal. Now, so they were matted 4 times. The Gemara now is going to discuss what were the 4 things that were matted. First, they allowed you to carry anything which melachta leheter letzerich gufa. What's something which melachta leheter letzerich gufa? Let's say a pot, a bowl, a normal knife, a book, anything which is tzerich melachta leheter, but only letzerich gufa, only for its own purpose, for its own use. Then that was the first heter. Must be that's before a time. Then they were matted for letzerich mekoimo, meaning if you need to sit down and it's on your chair, a toy, you're allowed to take it away. That's the second heter. They allow dovash malachta leissa for using it, but not for its place. So if you've got a muktzah on your chair, you can't move it away. Badayin, and still after the matter 3 times. Only something that can be moved with 1 hand. Something that requires 2 hands to move, that was still forbidden because that's a very heavy item, and very heavy items people don't normally move around. Then said everything is mutter on Shabbos, even something with 2 hands. So according to our buyer, even after the matter 4 times, if you kept the cheshbon, are you allowed to move a keli shemalachta leissa? Letzerich mekoime according to our buyer. Anybody know? According to Abai, allowed to move keli shemalachta leissa letzerich mekoime? No. Because Abai said they forbade everything, they were matted 4 times. What were the matter 4 times? Keli shemalachta leheter for using it. Then keli shemalachta leheter for its place. Then keli shemalachta leissa for using it. And then finally, even something which requires 2 hands to move around. So that's 4 heterim. But they were never matter keli shemalachta leissa letzerich mekoime. So according to Abai, you're not allowed to move a keli shemalachta leissa letzerich mekoime. Rava doesn't agree with him. Once they were matter, it doesn't make any sense that they should differentiate. When they made the kula, they weren't going to say this is mutter letzerich kufa, but not mekoime. That doesn't make any sense. Once they were matter a level, they were matter across the board. Letzerich kufa and letzerich mekoime. No, not according to Rava. No, it's Elama Rava. What were the 4 stages? First, they were matted either for using it or for its place. That was the first stage. The second stage was they allowed you to move something just to protect the item from the sun to the shade, and from the shade to the sun. You're allowed to move it. That's the second stage. They allowed you to move something both for itself or for its place. But that they permitted. They never got to the stage of permitting a keli shmelachta le'issa to move it, to protect it from the sun to the shade. They still only something which one person can, not 2 people. Even if 2 people need to carry it. So it comes out of Rava is chilek on Abaya on 3 halachas, if you keep track. Again, the Chemya came along and forbade everything. There were matter 4 stages, very, very briefly. According to Abaya, what are the 4 stages? First, keli shmelachta le'heta for itself. Then keli shmelachta le'heta for its place. Then keli shmelachta le'issa for itself. And then finally, even something which requires 2 hands to move. Rava says, no. The first had the matter keli shmelachta le'heta for itself and for its place. Then keli shmelachta le'issa, then they were matter it mechamo le'tzel, moving it to protect it. Then they were matter keli shmelachta le'issa for itself and for its place, and then even something which 2 people can carry. According to Abai, you're allowed to carry something which 2 people don't need it to carry? No. Because according to Abai, there only matters something which 2 hands can carry, but not 2 people. According to Abai, are you allowed to carry keli shmelachta le'issa le'tzorech gufoy? So le'tzorech mekomoy? No. Because he only permitted it at the 3rd stage was only le'tzorech gufoy, not le'tzorech mekomoy. According to Rava, that was in the 3rd stage, they were permitted le'tzorech gufoy and le'tzorech mekomoy. And finally, according to Abaya, are you allowed to move it mechamo le'tzel from the sun to the shade? No, because he only permitted keli shmelachta le'heta to protect it either for itself or for its place. According to Rava, it's permitted. We pass like Rava. So and this is how we pass them. Which means that if you see your phone is outside and it's sunny or rainy and the phone is going to get ruined, are you allowed to bring it inside the house to protect it? According to Rava? So no, keli shmelachta le'issa is forbidden, if you remember. Rava says the first stage of matter keli shmelachta le'heta is a good from mekomoy. Then the matter keli shmelachta le'heta mechamo le'tzel to protect it. Then keli shmelachta le'issa le'tzorech gufoy mekomoy, but not to protect it. And then finally something which requires 2 people to move it. But keli shmelachta le'issa mechamo le'tzel never permitted, and that is the halacha. People are not aware of it. That if you've got something precious, let's say you've got your camera, and it's sitting somewhere, and you're scared that one of your children will smash it, and you want to move it, you're not allowed to move it. Now you have different ways of moving it. How could you move it? Let's say move, if it's on the table, you can move the table and knock it, like lift the table, should tilt off. Somebody was came to me Friday night that he left his computer, his laptop, on his bed. So a laptop is okay, that's a different musmach with chasson kiss. I said to him that the way to do it is to lift up the duvet and let it fall on the floor. He wasn't very keen about it because he was scared that the thing would smash. There was no other way to do it. He wasn't allowed to, or to knock it with his elbow onto the floor. But otherwise, you can't move it because it's books about chasson kiss is not allowed to. Okay. Lift up the whole duvet. No, that's not forbidden. Lift up the duvet because that's like picking it up with a glove. No, it wasn't a bosses because the person does not intend to keep his laptop on his bed on Shabbos. People do it. It's not like you store. That's not a place to store it. Let's just do mamish to get to the thing. Eisvei Abaya. So Abaya asked him meducha. This thing which we said before about grinding spices. So you see that you're not allowed to move it. And according to you, you're allowed to move it. So why not? There we talk about somebody who wants to move it just to protect it. That's forbidden. The previous Gemara where we said if you chop up meat, you're not allowed to. And according to you, you're allowed to. So Teres asked the Kasha that the Gemara asked both of these questions on Amud Aleph. And the Gemara there answered once according to Nechemia that's more machmir that you're not allowed to use something for a specific purpose, and once according to once by saying that's muktzimach chasson kiss. So Teres says that the MS we could have answered it like that. Only it's a doichag. Because at the end of the day, it's nice to be able to say it's according to everybody. And that's why we say it's mechamo le'tzel. Okay, we'll stop here. Actually, I thought we should stop here or carry on. We'll stop here. We'll stop here. Okay. Very good. We're okay with the thing. Not as ahead as I always want to be, but very good. Atzlacha with everything. Everybody, any questions? I'm going to press off already, so that way it starts converting already. So I wish you all a very good night. Atzlacha with everything. Right.